Are in the Crossfire tonight, Democrat David Cicilline and Republican Steve Scalise. I think Speaker Boehner faces a key question tonight. If he can't rely on his party's most conservative members, the real activists, how does he govern for the next 2 years? If he can't get 218 Republican votes to pass something, he's going to only have to get some Democrats. Can he take, should he take, 180 or so Republicans and try to find enough Democrats to work with him that they could routinely pass things? It would mean accepting the permanent anger of about 50 members of his party and many outside groups. But it might enable him to run the House. And I think he's got to weigh tonight what's the best future for the House, given what happened in the last 48 hours.
Yeah, well, since you're here and you're in this weird situation, you guys backed. Well, Boehner backed you, basically. I think Boehner really didn't want to take it this far. You guys said, look, let's go. He stood with you. Now tonight, he's kind of having to go away from you and go toward Democrats. Are you going to continue to back Boehner? Is this something that you're going to hold against Boehner, or do you think Boehner's your hero because he was with you at least up until now?
I support the way that Speaker Boehner's handled this. It's been a very tough situation. And look, I was in that room with him and a few of our members where he literally was putting option after option on the table to President Obama, and President Obama just sat back and said, I'm not even going to be willing to negotiate on anything. So it's a tough situation when you've got a speaker saying, look, I'm here to negotiate. We've cast a lot of votes to pass bills to open parts of government that the president, people in his parties would say we don't want to fund, that these people want to shut down everything. We actually cast the votes to keep those areas of government open.
But quick follow-up now. I mean, I think that the speaker put on the table, this is a leadership position from him. How is he supposed to move forward? And to get stuff done, he may have to move in more of a direction of working with Democrats. You don't seem to be willing to go with him in that direction. Are you going to wind up having to go against Boehner later? I mean, how does this work? How is the Tea Party thinking about this now? Boehner was with you. Basically, you guys, from my point of view, took him into a ditch. He's got to get out of that ditch. He's going to be working with Democrats. Do you turn on him? Do you stay with him, even if he is marginalizing you?
Look, Harry Reid and President Obama brought him into this ditch. He tried to work out of it with a lot of different... Neither of them wanted to negotiate at all. So, that's where they've been. But going forward, there are a lot of things we've been able to work with Speaker Boehner on. Look at the Farm Bill, where not one Democrat voted for a farm bill, yet we passed it with all Republican votes. Most people would have said that could never be done. So we want to tackle the big spending problems. I work with people like Paul Ryan and others that have good plans to get these problems.
I think the Speaker raises a really important question. I think the Speaker Boehner has to make a decision. Does he want to govern and be the Speaker of the House, or does he want to be the leader of the Republican caucus? Because on every issue, on the immigration bill, on an infrastructure plan, on dealing with the budget, if he's prepared to accept a governing coalition of most of the Democrats and some group of Republicans, we can get the work done. And that's what our country needs right now.
Let me ask this question, because I was here with Tip O'Neill, and you had this kind of a coalition. I was here with Jim Wright. You had the kind of coalition. I was here with Tom Foley. Here's the difference. It was historically always virtually all the Republicans and 50 or 60 Democrats.
Right.
Now, do you think that Leader Pelosi will tolerate 40 or 50 Democrats voting with John Boehner? Or does he have to cut a deal with Pelosi, in which case the deal, frankly, is so far to the left, he probably can't cut it?
I think what has to happen is Speaker Boehner has to accept the notion that what is right for this country is to build a governing coalition that's going to require support from the Democrats, that he cannot any longer listen to this very far right of his caucus, because they can pass bills in the House, but they're going nowhere. If we actually want to confront the issues in our country...
left doesn't want to pass
No, but if you want to...
Barack Obama wants to bring us from crisis to crisis and from brink of default...
you just bragged about you passed a lot of things in the House, and the problem is you passed things that nobody wants, but you're passing things that will not pass the Senate or will not be signed by the President. So you can pass stuff, but the idea is you want to make it work for the American people, and that requires passage in the House, passage in the Senate, signature of the President. So I think it requires a working relationship between Leader Pelosi and the Speaker. The leader has made it very clear she's interested in getting things done for the American people. Immigration reform, on a budget, on rebuilding our infrastructure, on making the investments in science and research.
That's just not been the case. That's just not been. We actually passed a bill to fund the National Institute of Health, to fund cancer research. It was a bipartisan vote. The day we passed it, President Obama issued a veto threat. We passed a bill to fund FEMA. To say, look, disaster relief should not be held.
Higher government.
If we can't get an agreement, if the President doesn't want to negotiate, you're saying shut it all down unless you get everything you want? That's not a reasonable approach.
Let me back and answer that. It's a very practical matter.
Sure.
Okay. It's virtually impossible, at least for me, to imagine that John Boehner can cut deals with Nancy Pelosi that are acceptable to the majority of the House Republicans. It's possible to imagine you could have a bipartisan coalition that comes together on one issue at a time where you get 40, 50, 60 people. My question, and I think Boehner has a big choice, but I also think Pelosi has a big choice. Would she tolerate parts of her caucus on an issue-by-issue basis, deciding to form a bipartisan working group, or will she insist that it has to be a Boehner-Pelosi negotiation, in which case, frankly, I think you're back to where we are right now?
No, but I think two things. One, I think Leader Pelosi has been an important and effective leader of our caucus. She speaks not only for herself, but really for the Democratic Party in the House. So I think she's been an effective advocate for our positions. And I think she has demonstrated her willingness always to work with the Speaker, to build, she calls him regularly and says, what do you need? How can we help make these votes a reality, whether it's on immigration, education funding, and the like. So I think she's willing to do that. He, frankly, has to, as you said, come to terms with, is he willing to develop a governing coalition that may not have a majority of the Republican caucus or may not include some of the most vocal opponents within the caucus?
Speaking of, let me just ask this basic question. You are going to be, when this thing passes, with or without you, you're going to be in budget negotiations. Who's your leader? Who is the leader of the Republican Party? It's been baffling from the outside to watch Ted Cruz act as a whip in the House, and sometimes seems like he's the speaker. Who is Ted Cruz your leader? Is Boehner your leader? Who's your leader?
Well, first of all, it was Harry Reid who tabled all of those bills in the Senate that led to a government shutdown. But if you look at the leader, John Boehner's absolutely the leader as the speaker. But in the budget negotiations, Paul Ryan's our budget chairman. I don't think there's anybody better in this town that understands how to solve real problems. And if the president wants to solve problems, he knows he can work with Paul and get that done. He hasn't yet agreed. And Barack Obama's got a real question he's going to have to answer. Does he want to be the leader of the free world and actually sit here and solve these problems?
Let me just ask you, though.
That are of the other party.
I think
Paul Ryan's got really good plans.
You have done a great job of communicating that you're frustrated with the leadership of President Obama. So let's just stipulate to that. I'm trying to figure out the leadership of your party. Who can actually deliver votes for a deal that can pass the Senate? Who can do that?
We proved we can deliver votes to pass a budget. We passed a budget every year. It took the Senate 4 years to pass one. They've got to figure out how to pass things, too, by the way.
Well, they passed one 6 months ago.
I'm glad they passed one in 4 years.
And you won't meet with them for 6 months.
But if you look, Paul Ryan's been talking to Patty Murray. Paul Ryan's been talking to Patty Murray every week for the last 6 months. Clearly, they're very far apart. We live in a divided government, Van. You know that.
Can Paul deliver the votes? Can Paul Ryan deliver the votes?
Absolutely.
For a deal that can pass the Senate.
On a budget deal.
Your question really is one of the big challenges. And I think the Speaker has unfortunately, on a number of instances, been unable to deliver the votes. And so when you're in some of these very difficult negotiations, there's no question Leader Pelosi delivers the votes of the Democratic caucus.
Absolutely.
Unequivocally, because we have confidence in her leadership. But it's different votes. It's different policies, but we have tremendous confidence in her leadership. The problem is you need to have somebody on the other side of the table who actually can deliver what he says or she says he can deliver. That's part of the problem.
We actually care about the details, and the details matter. But shouldn't we solve the problems? I mean, Medicare is going bankrupt in the next few years if we don't solve it. President Obama wants to just ignore that, maybe wait till it's a crisis. We ought to solve it now.
Well, let me ask one question about that, though, because having started with Carter and Reagan and Bush 1 and Clinton, I thought it was almost weird today that the president found time to meet with Miss America. But he hasn't found time to meet one-on-one with John Boehner. He hasn't found time, I think, to meet with Mitch McConnell in months. Doesn't the president have to also take a leadership role in actually working with the Congress before there's a crisis?
I think a fair review of the president's engagement with Congress would reveal that he has attempted on more occasions than any president I can remember to reach out to people on both sides of the aisle, particularly people on the other side of the aisle, to help craft solutions to the big challenges facing our country, and each time he's been repudiated. So I think the president has met repeatedly with members of Congress.
Ronald Reagan and Tim O'Neill.
By the way, they haven't agreed with him. They haven't agreed with his positions or been willing to do what he asked. But there's lots of conversations.
Okay, well, and this is a great conversation. We want to keep it going. We want you both to stay here. Next, we're going to cease fire, and we're going to try to see if there's anything that you two can actually agree on. We also are going to want you at home to weigh in on tonight's fireback question. Who won the shutdown fight? And you can reply with President Obama,